27.
26.
25 seconds.
24, 23,
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds, 19,
18.
17 seconds.
16,
15 seconds.
14,
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds.
9,
8.
7.
6.
6 what?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome aboard the Scotch Tracker. Today we'll be discussing the first episode of Lower Deck Season 2 called Strange Energies. And we'll be discussing it today with Gary Cannon. Thanks very much for joining the discussion today.
My pleasure.
What did you think were the funniest parts of the episode?
The funniest parts. Oh goodness. I hadn't thought. It's hard to identify individual. I'm sure over the course of our conversation, I'll interject with no, that's my funniest, and I'll keep coming back.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Funniest. I did love the something special about seeing a cat doctor licking an ice cream cone. That something I never thought I'd see even on Star Trek, and that's one of the things I like about Star Trek is it makes you see the world in a different way. And I now look at my cat if I were to have ice cream again and think, I wonder if she would actually like this.
Cool.
I'll cite that as my example for the moment.
Well, that's good. And I think the parts of the episode that I found funniest were there's a point like at the start and the point at the end. And the point at the start was when the holographic Boimler says about the Cardassians, they keep showing me lights.
Let's keep showing. Yes, okay, I promote that one to my favorite too.
And then I really thought it was quite funny at the end of the episode when Rutherford, who's like rediscovered
Hatred
his
of pears.
his hatred of pears, says like bleep pears.
Yes. And that's a sentiment I could agree with. So I was pretty, I mean, the very notion of seeing somebody sitting in their bunk just eating pears, because he was eating one and had 3 different rinds of pears behind him at one point. That's like, okay, somebody has a new addiction, and that's fine.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about the pre-credit sequence? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, the subtle changes were interesting. I mean, the Borg, pre-credit sequence. Sorry, I was thinking credit sequence. Pre-credit sequence. To my everlasting shame, I will confess that they got me. I had not figured out it was a holodeck show. I hadn't even figured out that it was therapy. When Boimler said, "I'm a hologram," I thought, wait, what is this? And I didn't allow it to register because there was so much action going involved and I was trying to soak it all in. And not until they paused the program did I actually realize it. And I'm unworthy as a Star Trek fan to not have caught that. Although I shouldn't say that because anybody watching it should feel they're okay too. They're in good company.
I guessed that it was a holo program even before the episode aired. Because it was included in the trailer.
Right.
And with her in like workout clothes, I thought, like, how could you get into that situation? And I thought maybe it's, well, the situation that I thought of was maybe that she was, exercising in the holodeck, much like Worf or whoever would use the holodeck as like an exercise opportunity. So I didn't really think it was much of a surprise, but yeah.
I had dismissed that because of. When Picard was captured and tortured by Cardassians, he was initially partly undressed, and I thought, okay, well, maybe this Cardassian torturer is doing the same.
And then when it showed you like the exteriors of the ships and stuff like that, the very first shots of this episode, then I started to think, maybe in my speculation that it's possibly a holoprogram, is not true, is not accurate. So yeah, that kept me guessing. So I thought that was good that they included the exteriors.
That's good. That's good writing. I mean, if in both of our cases, we were at different points made to think, wait, what? My second hint was when she beamed single-handedly onto the bridge of a Federation ship, which was held in place, and then could just destroy 3 other ships without any concern. You'd think those ships would have had their shields on, given they knew that she was running away or things like that. Well, that's odd, but I thought, okay, well, it's. I was willing to accept it because it wasn't outside of the realm of the appealing absurdities that Lower Decks has done before. They've made things like that kind of work. So.
Cool. I liked that they included like the TOS movie era bridge and the Miranda class starship. It's the same class as starship that was the Reliant in the Wrath of Khan. I thought it was pretty cool.
I had not noticed that. Yes.
No.
Now I have to watch it, a third time just to make sure, just to get all these additional things.
Cool. So, as well as the way the music stops when Mariner pauses the whole program, I thought it was like a neat sort of minor thing that happens. But I thought it was, cool anyway.
In fact, I'll give Lower Decks' composer, whose name I should know or should be able to cite readily, but I'm not apparently. I think that overall Lower Decks has the most consistently good film scoring. I mean, orchestral scoring. It's always engaging and it always works. The last time I did a rewatch of the first season last week, and I didn't find a single weakness in the orchestral score. And as a classical musician, I'm usually really quick to notice goods or bads in that specific aspect of something. And I'm really impressed by how Lower Decks is working with music.
Yeah, I think musically, I really like their incidental music, but I'm not a huge fan of the theme music because I don't find it like as memorable as some of the others.
Whereas I constantly sing that tune. I have created my own lyrics for that tune, in fact.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the I actually find it comparable to the themes of Next Generation and Voyager in terms of and it also conveys, just like those do, it conveys the spirit of the show very effectively. There's this over-the-top heroism. We're going to defeat everybody, but it is over the top. It's a little bit too much, just like the visual credit sequences. They're flying heroically over the thing, and then they careen and lose power after colliding with the ice pillar, and things like that, where it gives you a sense things aren't quite. This is not your normal Star Trek. So I think the title sequence music reinforces that impression very effectively.
Mm. I think like the visuals. I think the visuals in the titles are quite funny.
I still every time the ship comes across and I still laugh out loud. I've seen it. I don't know how many, at least 51 times, and I still laugh.
And noticed there's a new character that seems like she'll be recurring or regular. Who's introduced in the pre-credit sequence of this episode when Ensign Jennifer Dorian interrupts Mariner in the holodeck. Well,
I mean, strictly speaking, we meet Jennifer's voice near the end of first season, where there's the mention of a person named Character, and Mariner says, "What do you mean, Jennifer? There's no Jennifer on this ship. You can't believe Jennifer." And then at the very end of the episode, she points out, "Shut up, Jennifer." So there's a sense of animosity between them established. It is neat to see an Andorian in Starfleet. Mm-hmm. Not something we've seen very rarely, if ever. I'm trying to remember another Andorian in Starfleet. Anyway.
And Question of Check says hello. Thanks for joining the comments. Thanks for watching Question of Check. I wondered, have you seen that show? It's really good, Gary.
I have not. My particular Star Trek fandom nowadays tends to be limited to the shows. There's so much Star Trek out there in YouTube and Twitter and so forth, and I have yet to take a full dive. Last year, I was helped to involve in the creation of another group called Look Forward, and Dan, our resident Scotch Trekker, knows that well. But that was kind of my first step into everything that's out there, and now I'm here, so we'll see where I go next. I do tend to consult Memory Alpha almost every day for one thing or another. It's weird, but there it is. So
that's interesting.
The question of Trek, but I will write that one down.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like a quiz show, and people appear to do the quiz.
I love me some trivia.
Cool. So after the credits, there's like a scene where Mariner, Tandy, and Rutherford are talking about like relationships and stuff like that. I wondered like what you thought about that scene.
I'm glad they brought. I have two thoughts to that. One is they keep wanting. It seems like the writers want us to question whether Tendi and Rutherford will be a romantic match at some point. Quite frankly, I'm hoping they don't go that route. But if they do, I can be convinced. I think it's great to see male and female friendships represented in cinema and television. So that was interesting to see where are they going to take that in this second season. Have they just given us some hints or not? And the other aspect was I like how they're handling Rutherford's the return of his cybernetic implant. At the end of season 1, it looked like they might have given him a complete memory wipe. And I'm glad that they didn't, or at least I'm glad that they are not leaning into that they're allowing him to continue developing the same friendships. He wants to date the same girl he had dated before. So he's still the same person. And bit by bit, he seems to be restoring to the Rutherford that we know and love, or at least who I know and love.
Yeah, I'm glad about that aspect. But I think maybe because it had been so long since season 1, watching, and I watched the Strange Energies twice, like yourself, which you told me before we went live.
Right.
But I think like the first time watching this episode, it felt like not invested in the characters enough to like care what they were talking about. Yeah, it was just like, just do whatever you'd like to do, I don't really care.
Now, did you feel similarly through the first season in general?
I think a little bit. I think it's because, like, in my opinion, like they are it is that sort of over the topness and sort of comical way that they are portrayed. I think I find it like really difficult to buy that they are Starfleet characters because of that. I think
in a way, those are some of the reasons why I love these characters and why I'm able to identify with them. You and I have talked off outside of this forum about how I feel like I would not make it in Starfleet. I wouldn't get accepted to the Academy, and I know I wouldn't make it through the Academy from what we've seen is involved in the process. If I did, I'd be one of those like the alternate future Picard who's in astrometrics in Tapestry, who's punctual. That's his. That I could do. I can be punctual. But I feel like these 4 characters are people who I can associate with and even identify with. I'm very Boimler. Of all of the characters in Star Trek, the 2 I'm most similar to are Bashir and Boimler. That kind of neuroticism, but also the obsessiveness and the wanting to be great at everything, and wanting to please everybody, and et cetera, et cetera. I get that. And the fact that gets in his way is a problem. I love the idea of Beckett Mariner, that there would be somebody in Lower Decks who is just as competent as any Starfleet officer we have ever seen. Anyway, so I like that laid back approach. It makes me feel like I'm part of Star Trek even more than I was before. Yeah, having those characters.
I understand that. I wondered what you thought about how the Abergosian culture or society is portrayed in this episode.
I don't think we really saw enough to assess it, and that was an unfortunate option. The first scene we see, I think, it's a university quad. They're at Oxford or here at the University of Washington here in Seattle. Okay, well that's plenty enough, but they have. The leader says he has constituents, so we gather it's some kind of democratic society, even if he can't choose his phone numbers, which I thought that was a very nice conceit because I've been there, standing at the counter for 15 minutes trying to decide your phone number. But yeah, I didn't feel like we got to see them very much, I suspect we may never see them again. Lower Decks has done that before, at least so far.
Yeah. I thought it portrayed them as sort of having a different culture in that they value numbers so much, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Well, he mentioned the leader. I don't remember his official title. He does mention that they have a close connection with numbers, but I don't think we ever saw anything in how they behave that reinforces that. I may be in error, though. Please correct me if I'm forgetting some variable.
Or, in the comments.
I can't see the comments. Oh, that's because I need to go to click on that. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now
I like the moment when Mariner washes off a large display and it looks like a whale-like marine life form that's underneath, and I thought that seemed like a nice sort of callback to the voyage home, without being too on the nose. I find Lower Decks can quite often be quite on the nose, so I was glad.
And sometimes they're quite subtle as well in those references. Yeah. It's Ransom with his double fist punch, which he does all the time, which we mock from Kirk, but they don't overdo it. Sometimes they do, but I think often enough they don't. And there's the one point where Boimler describes somebody in an earlier episode as was it a Kirk sundae with Trip Tucker sprinkles. Just a subtle little notion, to Tucker's suavity or sexuality or what have you. But that's all that needed, and that's all as far as where they went.
Regarding references to previous track, what did you think about the many references to Gary Mitchell?
Yeah, so the Gary Mitchell storyline in Where No Man Has Gone Before has never been a favorite of mine. It's a crucial episode in the development of Gene Roddenberry's thoughts about Star Trek, so I give it credit for that. But it doesn't engage me particularly. And I thought they really rammed that into our minds. I really did like that they essentially solved the problem by dropping a boulder on the guy, which is what they did with Gary Mitchell too. That was a nice touch. And maybe that's why they had to harp on Gary Mitchell so much in order to set up that resolution to the problem. I don't know. It's a little overdone, but it didn't bother me excessively.
And then I think it's after the boulder's dropped on him that he's still Ransom's still having the effect of the whatever it is, the strange energies of the title of the episode.
Yeah.
And seems like no explanation of why they're still affecting him. I thought.
I'm trying to remember. My recollection, which again is often faulty in the universe, was that after the boulder he was okay. It was when Mariner was constantly kicking him in the neutral zone, which is a great turn of phrase, that he was still flickering into that reality at that point. One of the things I actually like about Lower Decks in general is that they don't bother themselves too much with the solution to the problem. Because Lower Decks is not about the sci-fi problem that we have that week. It's about those four characters and how they interact with each other and how they interact in that world. Now, this episode, they actually devoted a lot of energy to solving the ransom problem. And a bit too much for my particular taste. It lost some of the season 1 flair, which I loved. That may be in reaction to fan feedback they received, or from the studio or what have you. I don't know. And it may be a continuing trend. They're going to devote more to the sci-fi aspects of the show. So you're talking about that you didn't really know how they fixed Ransom in the godlike world. In Lower Decks, for some reason, I don't have a big problem with it. They figure out a way to kind of resolve it. It's the doctor happens to be right there when Boimler is covered in the goo, and so they can solve this in 30 seconds of analysis by putting the gas through the ship, like in the pilot episode. They come up with an idea, and they do it, but that's not the point of the episode.
It seems like the struggles to overcome the problem is just like it adds to like the hecticness of the episode's plotting. I feel like it's made like hectic to such a point. Again, that I don't feel is very realistic. But with this portrayal, I thought like Lower Decks, it, in my opinion, has done like already in season 1 a storyline of a human crew member ascending to godliness. I thought it was more successful the first time around.
I wasn't a big fan of that the first time. It wasn't Fletcher, it was the other guy, who was ascending. I really liked how they had him ascend. That it becomes a phenomenally painful experience. No, I changed my mind. As a formerly religious person, that tickled my sensibilities.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I thought the animation when Ransom ascends wasn't very good in this episode. It's so colourful, and I didn't think it was like really. It was so cartoon-like. I think that's how I felt. It wasn't, again, something that didn't seem that realistic to me.
I like that way of putting it. Nice. To me, it really harkened back to the original series style of dealing this kind of meld of sci-fi and fantasy. The giant head in space who bites the ship, and you can see the innards of his teeth. That felt very much like, was it the hand of Apollo who was just coming out and holding him? It was very old school to me. In a way, and you're right that it is in certain aspects that were the unrealistic aspects of the original series too.
But I liked, you see like I don't know what you call it, maybe like a totem or something that seemed a little bit like the one that's on Mirimani's planet. I thought in the Side of Paradise, I thought it was quite TOS like the way that it was portrayed. And I had the same thought about. I had the same thought about Who Mourns for Adonais. It was similar to with the head, and then eventually also the hands appearing in space,
which did also inspire two of the other contenders for funniest moments of the episode, which are "There's a head approaching, Captain," and then "Prepare for grappling." It's not something we think of. I mean, in one of my other realities, in Dungeons & Dragons, sure, we have to prepare for grappling all the time, but just not on a spaceship.
Cool. and there's seems like some interaction with Mariner's dad, Admiral Freeman, in this episode. I quite like that seems to be like an ongoing, occasional thing that he turns up.
Yeah, I'm really glad though that they've seemed to have resolved the conflict issues from the first season between Mariner and Captain Freeman. That was kind of the overarching plot for her, at least for Mariner, and when they could have taken it in a certain way. I like that they took it in this way of they have found this détente, and they'll continue to love each other as family members and really disagree with each other as Starfleet, and that's okay. I hope they're able to continue in that line as convincingly as they ended it in this episode.
I thought it was like really extreme for Captain Freeman to confine Mariner to the brig.
Yeah, I think that was just an excuse to actually see Mariner in the brig, because it's been established at least twice before that she loves being in the brig. So, she did, I don't know, she probably deserved it for something, even if not for what we saw.
Regarding like Tendi causing Rutherford pain, didn't really make much sense to me. Did it make sense to you?
In two respects, sort of. One is I think we've seen a little darker side of Tendi in this episode, which I like. She was always bubbly to an extreme, and I think it was to an extreme that overshadowed the other aspects of her character. Like she's a badass fighter, and we only see that the once, and I'd love to see something like that again. And the other is that aspect of whether they're playing with an eventual Tendi Rutherford romance. If she was romantically involved, then I believe, yes, Tendi would go to those extremes. And I think they explained well enough that just their friendship meant that much to her. So while it bothered me as it was happening, I'll accept it given the explanation they gave it.
Interesting. In the dialogue, they referred to music quite a bit in this episode. What did you think about that, being a musician yourself?
Did they? I'm trying... Okay, what am I not thinking of?
All right, well, I noted down.
Good.
Really,
that's good.
I really disliked how the episode portrays music as unimportant and basically meaningless.
Yes, the destruction of the Museum of Popular Music as well. Did you really need that? So
that's the first one, yeah. And then later, there's quite a few. Later, when Captain Freeman realizes it wasn't her complimenting Ransom about his guitar playing that was his undoing or whatever.
Oh, right.
And then finally, the reference that Riker makes, a musical reference. In the final scene.
I get the sense that's going to be a running gimmick for Riker, that he's just going to cite jazz things, like he ended the season 1 with his jazz riff of sorts. Yeah. Now the jibe at at the Museum of Popular Music, I absolutely loved. That was another contender for funniest, because here in Seattle we have a museum that's now called Mopop. It was once the Experience Music Project, and it's essentially a museum to popular culture in general. There have been several Star Trek exhibits, but mostly the standing exhibits are to popular music. And that museum, when it was constructed, came under great fire here in Seattle for whether it was needed, but also for what was often perceived of as horrid architecture. I don't have a problem with it. It's different, and that's not a problem in my mind. So the notion of somebody saying, you don't really need a museum of popular culture, I feel like whatever writer inserted that line into the episode is from Seattle. Don't know who it would be.
It's interesting.
That was a long explanation. I apologize.
I appreciate your explanation. And then, what do you think about like how the Trill character Barnes, who Rutherford goes on a date with? What did you think about how the way she was depicted?
In a general sense, I actually like the character well enough. There is a certain so I like that we have a regularly recurring ensign who is navigator on the bridge, or maybe she's in at the opposite position. I think she may have gone back and forth. I may be erring here too. I didn't even notice that she was semi-regular until I think 4th time through watching the first season, because obsessive personality. I think it's. I hope that she becomes more than a caricature of. There are certain superficialities that we've seen in her. The notion of, I'm going swimming with my girlfriends, and the implied sexuality in all of that. It's superficial. They could make it part of an interesting character. We'll see where they go with that. Again, it's one of those things. I hope they don't abuse that direction.
I thought
Does that fit?
Yeah, I thought like the same sort of, maybe the same sort of thought about like the Trill aspect of her character, because she's obviously Trill, and she talks about, I think, her sister in this episode, and how she has a symbiont, and I just thought, like, why does every scene that includes a Trill have to be about Trill stuff?
Well, and that's one of the things I like about her, is that she doesn't have a symbiont. And I think this was the first time that character has made mention of being Trill. We see the spots, but that's it. And I really like the idea of finally seeing a Trill character who is not, for whatever reason, symbiont joined. Thank you. Who's a normal Trill, and in a way that's very much in the spirits of Lower Decks. It's about these normal people. Except I guess Tendi, the Orions. She's rather unusual for an Orion. Yeah,
like I noted down Tendi. I found like one line that she says quite unrealistic for a Starfleet character, when she says that her hyperspray contains medical venom.
Yes. Yeah, that line and was a little toss-offish in a way that, like, please don't go too far in just ignoring the science and science fiction. Similarly, the notion of strange energies and just calling that its name. But then when they doubled down on it and reinforced, well, maybe it is kind of, after all, we have this thing called black matter. It's kind of a rather lame name. But since we know nothing about it, we're still calling it that. Maybe that's in a way what they're hearkening to. I don't know.
You mentioned before we were live you had a bit of an issue about red matter.
Yeah, the first of the 3 reboot movies, as it were, in the Kelvin timeline, the notion of red matter really angered me in the theater. I actually shook my fist in the theater. I think my wife had to hold my arm down for it. Maybe not that bad. That they have this huge, incredible matter that can do this amazing thing, and instead of calling it anything that was remotely scientific, they just decided to say, "Oh, it's red matter," and it felt like very sloppy writing. Somehow, in a comic perspective, for strange energies and medical venom, it didn't strike me as strongly. Maybe that's just because I love Lower Decks, so I was giving it the benefit of the doubt already.
Cool. I kept thinking, like, I think it would be cool if they'd had like more backstory to what those energies actually were, but they didn't go that way, I guess.
Well, that's part of, at least in my opinion, it's part of what Lower Decks is going toward. Is more about the characters than about the sci-fi. This episode, they were really approaching going too far against the, going too far in not explaining the science behind the fiction that was going on, like you're saying. But it is a 20-minute show as opposed to a 42-minute show.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if the animated series included more sort of like, explanation or, scientific sort of jargon. Or
I think they did. I mean, the writing in the animated series wasn't particularly sophisticated, but I think like some. I happen to have the list of episodes for animated series here, so we'll go with that. Or even if they didn't come up with an explanation, they talked about what was happening. I'm looking at the counterclock incident when the everybody is aging backwards quite rapidly, and they talk about what that means and the significance of it, and they do briefly make up a reason of why it could be happening, but they don't go into great detail about it as much as even the original series would.
In this episode, like, what would you have liked to have happened to Ransom? Were you like satisfied with what ultimately happens with him?
Wow. I mean, I admit that I'm not usually one for the certain varieties of physical humor. Having the situation be resolved by her kicking him in the neutral zone, again, as the phrase they used was, didn't really excite me. But over time, I started actually laughing, and so I guess that's okay. They found a comedic answer, just like they found a comedic answer in the first season of having the piece of the core that became sentient and just floating it through space, and then it takes over the enemy ship. Very comedic in a kind of simplistic way. I liked the boulder. In a way, it was a very original series resolution, which
I kept thinking like surely he's going to end up like a red shirt and die.
I'm glad they didn't kill him. I think that the character of Ransom has some possibilities.
I was glad. I was disappointed that he wasn't killed off because I think it would have given like this episode more sort of narrative weight and like importance. Like this is the one where Ransom dies, than that ultimately doesn't have a lot of that sort of narrative weight, I think.
True, they did just kill off a central character in the previous episode.
Yeah, I know, which really frustrated me because that was, and Shax was my favorite character from the first season, and then like the way that it was done, I thought was like really like mishandled because I thought like that was really like a basically just like a rip-off or copy of what they'd done with Tasha Yar in The Next Generation. And I was like, does that really need to happen? I don't think so.
You mean just the fact that he was killed at all, or the manner in which he died?
Probably the manner. I was more severely disappointed and frustrated by that death because I thought I was under the impression that surely like the character, the actor that portrays that character would then not have a job in the series, which I thought was greatly disappointing. But it turns out that's not the case. He's actually like listed in the credits, so I don't feel as badly like, now knowing that he's going to be back. The actor will be back at least, if not the character. Although there's also been a shot of the character in the trailer of the second season of Shax.
I didn't remember that.
I've seen speculated online that may have been just like a mistake at the time of doing the trailer. You know, he may actually be back. So who knows? It's certainly interesting. I think.
They sewed him back together, or his Bajoran identical twin, and things like that.
Who knows?
See, I find your comments very interesting because I found Shax's death to be quite appropriate, and it actually gave the whole show the kind of gravitas that you were talking about if they had killed Ransom this episode. I was impressed and surprised that this show would kill Shax. I think that for me, the manner in which it was done, this self-sacrifice for a character who he had already established a bond for Baby Bear Rutherford, was quite appropriate. He even hollers out, "This is the best day of my life." And so we know, even though it's the serious, wow, he's dead now, he was happy with it. And Captain Freeman says so in her eulogy. I think if Ransom had died in this, it would have felt to me more Tasha Yari, because it would have been pointless. That was the thing about her death, is she walks across the thing and is dead, and there was no sacrifice for it, which is the Starfleet way to go. So I thank you for those thoughts on Shax's death. I will reconsider, and I'll think about that in that context more.
Interesting. But then I really liked the last scene, I guess, that Ransom is in this episode, and I kept thinking, like, we wouldn't have had that scene if he had died, because I thought it was cool that the guy who's clearly a fan of Ransom, Stevens, reads Nightingale Woman, which is to Ransom, which is not only a reference to Where No Man Has Gone Before, another reference to that episode, where that same book is mentioned, but also it reminded me of Uhura's fate in The Changeling, where she ends up in the bed and re-educated.
Oh, that's I had not realized, or I had not thought of that type of depth in that particular scene. Again, thank you for sharing that. The Ransom's sycophant Stevens kind of was bothering me, but it works. I mean, Rutherford treats his boss in more or less the same way. The engineer. I was sad that he was not in the regular credit sequence. I thought they might promote him after Shax's death, but that's all right. But then that scene made it all okay. The fact that Ransom actually does have affection for Stevens. And it was sweet. We don't get to see that out of Ransom very often.
Yeah, but he calls him my little buddy.
Right.
I think. Yeah. What did you think about the last episode, or the cliffhanger where it involves the Phoenix?
On the Titan, Boimler on the Titan.
Yeah, the Titan. Sorry, I kept calling it the Phoenix.
I really like the excuse they seem to be giving for Boimler to eventually return to the Cerritos. That he stresses out because he's so, again, and I say this lovingly, as myself, he's a bit neurotic about these things. And it makes absolute sense that he would not be able to handle the stress of combat that the Titan has to go through. I remember seeing a headline yesterday of someone who says that the real breakout character of this third generation of Star Trek is Captain Riker, and are able in Nepenthe, in Picard, and now a couple times in Lower Decks to see what a Captain Riker was like. It's an interesting philosophy, but it is neat that they get to do something with that character.
I think that in a way, but then it really frustrated me that it comes back in the previous episodes of the season 1 finale, because how many times have they brought him back in season finale? So he appears in Enterprise series finale, these are Voyages, then Picard's season 1 finale, and then Lower Decks season 1 finale. Right. And Riker's my least favorite character of all the main characters from the Next Generation, and yet keeps being brought back. I found that
You know,
quite frustrating.
I wonder if part of that is because Jonathan Frakes, as a personality, has directed so many episodes after Next Generation that he's still integral to the Star Trek family in a way that perhaps some of the others aren't. LeVar Burton might be the exception to that. He's done so much directing. And a few others have, too. I mean, Roxanne Dawson and Robert Duncan McNeil and others, and they do wonderful jobs
We'll
of
be
it,
back.
too. Yeah, with
Yeah, you were reminding me how Robert Duncan McNeil will be returning in the season of Lower Decks.
Oh, he is. Oh, that's right. We've seen him on a commemorative plate in the trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually like the way that Lower Decks is handling. Is handling those callbacks. To a lot of people think of Lower Decks as a parody and leave it as such. I think it is half parody and it is half love letter to the first and second generations of Star Trek. A part of that is the callbacks. It's the Tucker sprinkles and it's bringing back Riker. But a lot of it is the feel of the adventures, the nature of the science, the certain aspects of the interactions of the characters. It harkens back to the Star Trek that I first fell in love with in a way that Discovery or Picard or the three J.J. Abrams movies don't quite. Discovery and Picard I still quite like. I'm glad they exist, but it doesn't always feel like the old Star Trek. There's no reason they need to, but I like that Lower Decks sometimes does take that route. I appreciate Lower Decks.
Would you say that you think that it has the feel of the older Star Trek, as you say, more or less than like the Orville does?
Wow, that's a good comparison. I love the Orville. Let's see.
They're both quite comedic as well.
They are. I mean, the Orville is becoming less and less comedic. Season 2 was. I hesitate to call season 2 really comedy. It was drama with comedic aspects, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer was, or some other things. Of drama with comedy interwoven. The Orville and Lower Decks are almost the same premise from a different prism. They want to look at the old Star Trek and write that love letter to the old Star Trek in a comedic way. Orville does it from the top, from the captain's chair, and Lower Decks does it from below, from the everyman. It's an outdated literary term, but I'm going to use it anyway. And so it's hard for me to say which is more than the other because they have different perspectives.
I like your answer.
It's they both have their purpose, their role. It's like asking if Voyager or Deep Space Nine is truer to the Next Generation. They both are, but in their different ways, in their different perspectives.
Yeah, I guess so. That's interesting.
I'm a diplomat at heart.
I really like your answer. I liked how Riker, since basically he's like my least favorite TNG character, or at least main character, hardly appears in this episode. It's just like you just get like the snippet of him at the end, and I liked how the episode ends on an action-packed cliffhanger.
Yes.
I didn't remember a time when Lower Decks did that before. It may have done with the first season. I don't think so.
Wow, that's a good observation. Looking at my episode list, yeah, they tend to resolve things in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And it tends to be the four of them, sitting around at the bar or in their bunks or something and just chatting like people do. It is nice to have the cliffhanger periodically. Like that, even if it's not a cliffhanger that deals with the Cerritos necessarily.
Yeah. What do you think about how Lower Decks is depicting the species, the Packlids?
We've only seen the one episode, so it'll be interesting to see if the Packlets come back. Really liked one aspect of that, at least, which is that I agree with Captain Freeman that everybody thinks of the Packlets as a joke. Sure, they had been a threat at different times, but we fans certainly saw them as a joke after that. So I like the notion of taking a species that we've dismissed and taking them seriously. They were a serious problem. Whether the Packlets as a society would actually evolve to have the technology they had, I question, but it's not without of the realm of possibilities. No.
Well, they initially appeared in the season 1 finale, and now they have reappeared in this episode.
Did they reappear? Oh, was that who they were fighting?
Yeah.
See, by that point, I was just paying attention to the crisis and to Boimler and Riker. I didn't, what was it? And actually, that brings another question. I think in the opening credit sequence, the new opening credit sequence, the Borg and Romulan fight scene, there was another ship off to the left. Was that a Packlet ship also?
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, so
I don't recall.
yeah, I saw the thing and thought, what is that? Yeah. I didn't recognize it, but it may have been Packlets. I wonder if Packlets will be the bad guys of Lower Decks, like the Klingons were for original series and the Romulans for Next Generation, Cardassians.
Yeah, I think it's looking like that way. It's looking like that's the way they're going.
They'll have to convince me, but we'll see.
I think maybe me more so. I think because, like, for me, like, I really like the way that they're dealt with or portrayed, like, prior to this. But then, like, because they're so, like, comedic originally, to me, it's sort of like why not just, like, continue to portray them that way? Because to me, that sort of style of comedy fits so well with the Lower Deck style. Where it's just like, make us better, fix our
So are you
ships.
saying that the Packlet comedy of Next Generation would have fit so well with the comedy style of Lower Decks that it would have been a
I
more
think so.
effective links, and it's unfortunate they're removing that?
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good perspective. Are there other species from Alpha Quadrant species from Next Generation, DS9, what have you, that might, in your mind, be a similar boon to the comedy of Lower Decks? Like, Andorians are not a comedic species. We now have an Andorian. Kind of works for the Trill in a certain sense.
Maybe Malon.
Oh, yeah.
Not entirely sure.
Yeah. And
There's
who knows?
There's so many species.
Right. Well, does anything leap to mind for it? I think it would be interesting to see again, not an Alpha Quadrant species, but see a Hirogen element to Lower Decks. There could be some comedy involved in that, bringing the big, powerful people, down to our level. Maybe that's just me dealing with my own psychological issues. And
I did think of the Ferengi, but then they've already done that, which I thought was quite effective, the way that they portrayed that Ferengi.
I really liked that the Ferengi was, and he wore a monocle, so that he was articulate and smart and educated. I like that they twisted the traditional Ferengi comedy there too.
Yeah, I thought they showed both aspects of because the Ferengi had been introduced with the intention of them being a big bad, and then more being taken more comedically on Deep Space Nine, and as the portrayals of the species went on, So I thought it was cool that you saw both sides of the Ferengi. Regarding this episode, do you have any more thoughts about it?
Do I have any more thoughts about it?
Yeah.
Wow, we've talked about. I had made some notes and
Did you like the
We've
effect
talked
of,
about
like,
everything in my notes. I'm impressed. Well
All
done,
right.
good sir.
Did you like the final effect of the episode where it's like the gluonic energy or whatever? You know, the face stretching.
Oh, right.
Whoa,
Is that what they called it? Glowonic? I thought, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gluonic something or other.
It reminded me of one of my beloved Voyager episodes that tends to be forgotten. It's not listed on any of the greats, and it doesn't actually need to be, but I still love it. Which was the Voyager is encountering a ship, and it's splintering the ship into many different areas, and everybody gets lost and finds their way back to the holodeck. And I kind of liked the effect, the warbly, liquidy effect that they created there. It was very
Twisted.
twisted. Thank you very much. I wanted to say shattered, but that's the later one than different sections, and it's the twisted.
Season
I do love that one. So I really liked that aspect of it, the visual aspect of a reality being transformed. It reminds me, I mean, that's in a way how this phenomenon should work, right? That's Neil deGrasse Tyson writes in his book, Death by Black Hole. He talks about what it would be like to approach a black hole, and the part of your body would be stretched, and then the rest of you would catch up. And what would that feel like? He asks, as I recall. It was a similar notion of this. What would it feel like to be stretched out into this Salvador Dali paradigm?
And then this is just referred to as the anomaly, whatever that means. But it's sort of funny enough. What it reminded me of was a different part in the track, which was the wormhole, which is encountered in the motion picture.
Yes.
But also, like, that effect seems to have been like duplicated a bit in like the season finale of the second season of Discovery, when they also likewise go through a wormhole. So yeah, I couldn't really think of sort of face stretching or stretching sort of one. I think your analogy to Twisted is really quite accurate.
No, that's it. We've seen that image in terms of ships, however. Before they go into warp, we see the ship lengthen.
Yeah.
Just not in terms of beings, of creatures.
Yeah. So thanks very much for joining the for discussion and discussing the episode today with me.
Thank you. This is great fun. It's great fun to talk about Lower Decks, one of my favorite series already, and to delve into it a bit.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed the discussion, and look forward to discussing the subsequent episodes of the second season of Lower Decks. So join us then, folks, and post down in the comments what you like or dislike about the season 2 premiere, Strange Energies of Lower Decks. We'll see you next time on the Scotch Tracker. Please remember to like and subscribe to the video. Bye for now.